Today we're going to have a look at Manoeuvre. Manoeuvre is a two-player game loosely based on Napoleonic warfare. The battlefield for the game will be an 8x8 gridded board made up of 4 small boards put together. There are many of these boards included in the game, ensuring a decent amount of battlefield variation from game to game. There are also 8 armies included in the base game. The makeup of each of these armies' units and corresponding card decks is asymmetrical, further increasing potential variation. Now Manoeuvre's gameplay is quite simple. You'll first take 2 armies, deal a hand of 5 cards to each player, and set the units up on opposite sides of the board. There are 5 phases to a player's turn, all quite simple to grasp. There is the discard phase, meaning you can discard any number of cards from your hand. The draw phase, where you will draw back up to a hand limit of 5 cards. Movement, where you can move 1 infantry unit of your choice 1 space, or 1 cavalry unit up to 2 spaces, and there are only infantry and cavalry units in the game, and as a note, there's no diagonal movement. How's it sounding so far? A bit dull? Bit simple? Well, don't tune out yet. The combat phase is next. If a unit of yours is adjacent to an enemy unit, you can play a card that corresponds to your unit to activate it for combat. The unit cards, which make up the majority of your army's decks, will have an attack value on it, such as 2d6 or perhaps 2d8, and these stats come into play a little later. After a card is played to initiate combat, the defender can play unit cards to add to their defense, but these cards again must correspond to the defending unit only. After defense cards are played, the attacker can now play more unit cards of the same unit, if they have them that is, and this will allow them to perhaps inflict more damage. Then to resolve the battle, first the defense total is added, which is the defending unit's strength, which is listed here, plus the unit's defense from any unit cards played previously. The attacker then adds up their total, which is the attacking unit's strength, then they roll the dice listed on the cards they played and adds that number to the strength to come to a total. This attack total is then faced off against the defense total by consulting a chart, which after a few games is easily memorized. But the gist of it is, on the rarer occasions where the attack total happens to be less than the defense total, the attacker will take a hit. If the attack total is greater than the defense value, however, the defending unit will either take a hit, be retreated, or both. In some cases, the defending unit may even be eliminated from play completely. It all depends on how much the attack total exceeds the defense total. A hit in this game means a unit is flipped over, and on the other side of the unit token is a strength of a lesser value. If it takes a further hit while it's in its reduced state, it is removed from play entirely. The 5th and final stage of a player's turn is the restoration phase, and it revolves around playing special cards you may have. These can do a variety of special actions. In this phase, you can also play a unit card matching a particular unit of yours to restore that unit from its weakened state. Okay, now before I discuss winning conditions, I want to elaborate as the mechanics I know seem fairly dull, but let's have a look at a few decisions players will face regularly. Let's say I attack you in this scenario, with this card here of a value of 2d6, and let's say you have a card that you could defend your unit with. It's not going to be as simple as just do I defend or not. You'll have to think, do I use this card to defend with now, or perhaps use the card to restore the unit if it's wounded as a result of being attacked? Or do you not use the card at all to defend or restore, as in your turn you could use it to activate and retaliate with an attack of your own? The benefit now being that you know that because I've just played a card to activate this particular unit for combat, there is a better chance that I won't have appropriate cards to defend with next turn. Because remember, the redraw phase happens at the beginning of a player's turn, not at the end. So if you've just been attacked, your opponent's hand size will be fewer than 5 cards when it's your turn. So that's just a taste of the simple mechanics, leading to deeper decisions than perhaps initially thought. Now comes the winning conditions. There are 2 possible endgame triggers. When someone eliminates 5 enemy units, they win. Simple. Or, when the second player has played through their entire full army deck, this will trigger scoring. Now scoring is worked out that basically each unit exerts an area of control. Each square of this area control that's on your opponent's side of the battlefield scores 1 point, but not if the area is contested by your opponent. So this is where I assume the game got its name Manoeuvre, because it's not just a straight out bash and dice fest. This scoring means movement is very important, as both players will be attempting to occupy their opponent's side of the battlefield as best and safely as they can, whilst defending their own and attempting to, well, I suppose bash the other player a bit. Of course, there is more to the game than I've showed you today. Leaders can be used to lead attacks from multiple units. Bombardments can occur, which are basically ranged attacks, and there is also the presence of terrain, which can affect gameplay in such ways as adding bonuses to attacking and defending units, so much so that quite often a well-placed piece of terrain can be the focus of a lot of attention throughout the game. Manoeuvre is another of my all-time favourite games. The simplicity of the mechanics makes it accessible, and it's a kind of game where it seems you're always torn between a few attractive options, each with their own set of pros and cons that need your consideration. To give yet another example of this, controlling how fast you go through your deck is important. Too fast means the game may end sooner. You may want this to occur if you're in the lead points-wise, or if not, delaying the endgame might be a better idea, but going through your deck too slow means you won't get access to previously played cards, because remember, only one player will reshuffle their deck and keep playing. It's when the second player goes through their entire army deck that scoring is triggered. But the con to reshuffling is that you'll also get access to any unit cards of eliminated units, and they just basically cog your hand. They're essentially useless. And I could go on about other factors like this where things appear simple on the outside but are deeper than initially thought. But to keep things shorter, we'll move on. Now the playtime can be around 1.5 hours, however it's most likely this will only be during the early stages of learning the game. Then I'd say it sits closer to a more comfortable 50 to 60 minutes. The components are all quite good. The battlefield boards are on thin cardstock though. A perspex sheet always helps if you have one, but even without one I wouldn't really consider it a problem. Manoeuvre offers a great deal of replay value. I mean, just to experience each army against one another would take a whopping 56 games. Despite its more abstract approach to the wargaming genre, I still feel this is an exceptional introductory wargame. Yes, it has abstract mechanics not too far from something like chess, but the depth of your decisions mirror some of the more detailed wargames on the market, and for that reason I recommend this game to anyone who is interested in getting a start in wargames, as without being weighed down by complexity it will still teach you basic fundamentals common to many wargames. Things like hand management, bluffing, when to go all out and attack, when to be more reserved, finding the best angle to attack from, setting traps for your opponents, why a retreat can sometimes be better than causing unit damage, the benefits of using terrain advantages, and much, much more. Manoeuvre, in my opinion, is a wargame, but a wargame that's not just for the wargamers.